Good morning, guys. Welcome to Monday, right? Okay, so I'm kind of transitioning to doing more videos. Obviously, I'm going to still do a lot of the written content, but for the community here on Facebook, here on YouTube, hi guys, good morning. We've had some really good posts lately coming through the group that I wanted to address, because all the posts are really good, guys. It's just not, I'm not rating them like, ooh, this is a 9, whatever. But I have really inspired some of the video content I want to do. So here we are. Sarah posts one about dealing with value and earning it. As she put it so aptly, the deeply tied to historical need to earn my value. So value is a funny thing. In fact, today, because we're starting Being You Brilliantly, that entire 8 weeks is about actually rooting into your value, connecting back to it. So let's talk about how value works. And you're going to get some more martial art today. Where is it? There it is. All right. So value, what do you guys typically think of as value? What makes you valuable, right? Think about that question. What makes me valuable? When I think about that, there's certain things that start popping into my head. And typically it's things that I have been valued for dominantly. One of those things is computers. When I was growing up and well into my 30s, I did a lot with technology. And that's where I got a lot of attention, a lot of praise, a lot of requests, right? That's where I could be needed. Yeah, see, we're getting a hint on how we've equated value. Where have you gotten attention? Where have you been needed? Right? Where have you gotten praise? This is how the child within us learns to equate its value. Okay? So attention, praise, and need. I want you to write, if you have a notebook, write those three things down. Attention, value, and or need and praise. Another way in which a child feels valued is time, inclusion. Okay, so one thing that we likely didn't get with our parents is playtime. A lot of times, unhealthy or maladjusted parents who do not know how to invite the child to play at the adult level rather than at the child level. And what this does is it confuses the child about their own wants and needs, their own preferences, because they're like, oh, what I want, what I play, what I enjoy isn't good enough. I need to be this way. And a lot of times the child matures way too fast, where a lot of other adults are like, well, you're really mature for your age. That's not a compliment, guys. That tells us that we have been, in a way, parentified and removed from our childhood to be messy and problematic and inconvenient, which we have a right to be, by the way. We have a right to be those things. And we were molded into a compliant, pleasing adult as a child. So this affected our sense of value. Now, I want you to think about this here. So if you're being praised, if you're being valued for or needed for a specific function, like for me, it was computers, right? So what were you valued for? That's what I want you to think about. What were you valued for? And it's very, very important, because the term what really, really points out what's going on, okay? So I'm going to do a split thingy here. Object and being. See, if you've spent any time in my material here in the group or on YouTube or on Facebook or on my blog, or you've worked with me, or you're in Codependence to Confidence, or you've enrolled in Being You Brilliantly, you will have heard this before. And if you're new to this, brace yourself, okay? I'm very deliberate in the words I choose, because one thing we've dealt with constantly is gaslighting. So that means shifting definitions of the same word whatever makes the narcissist happy, right? So I get very specific with the words I use so that you can trust it. So it's consistent. So it's reliable. So there's an easy chain of understanding what's going on. So when I say these words, I mean them deliberately. Okay. There are two forms of value in relationships. One's called object value or utility value. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You're a utility. It's like you're the gas company. The narcissist pays you to please them with your supply. We pay the gas company to send us gas to heat the house, right? It's not like you're calling up the gas company and telling the gas company how much you love it and how much you appreciate it. Like, thank you for sending me the gas. I really appreciate it. You want to go out to lunch sometime, gas company? No. We pay the bill, we get the gas. That's all we care about. That's a utility relationship. There really isn't a whole lot of emotion in it. There's not a lot of personal nature to it. It's just a utility. It's like, yep, pay, get the thing, do my thing. This is how narcissistic relationships function. You're the supply. He's buying you with the love bombing, and now you're obligated, in his mind, not in reality, to please him by regulating his self-image, his emotions, his problems, and enabling him, creating this comfort zone around his problems, his mistakes, and his consequences. Okay? And if we grew up with this dynamic, then we were programmed that our value equates to our output, which means I'm only valuable if I'm needed. I only exist if someone needs me. Does that sound familiar? Who am I if I'm not needed by somebody, or if I don't have a relationship? This is where this comes from. This is why when we exit relationships, there's an emptiness that shows up. It's like, who am I? I don't even know if I exist. I feel invisible. Am I even real? I mean, that was one I got a lot of. I don't know what to do. There's not a relationship to focus on and fix, right? That's what happens to us when our value has been attached to an output. It's also what leads us into chasing. It's what leads us into constantly performing, having to do more, do better, rise up, get to the next level, that kind of thing, okay? This is utility-based value. Now, this has a role. It's not like it's wrong or bad. It has a role, but that role is very, very narrow, and it only deals with business or work relationships or some sort of utility transaction, like you hire me to paint a wall, then my capability of painting Mr. Wall is very important, right? Or if you hire me to, assist you through this, my capability is really important, right? So there is a utility component to it. But what's happened to us is we're the empathetic ones. We're the ones who are coming from here. We're not coming from a utility like I have a need, give me the need. We want to connect. We want to have a heart-to-heart experience with another human being, right? All right. Well, if we're in a relationship with a narcissist or someone who is rooted in utility relating, who has matured emotionally, then what's going to happen is we're going to come at them with connection. They're going to come at us with utility, and we're never going to connect. We will give them the utility because we think that's where the connection will happen. But they run away. They're like, I got my sandwich. I'm happy. And they're gone. And then we're left empty. We're left wondering, what did we do wrong? I got to do better. And then when you don't do it the right way, then they start getting upset. You're like, I don't like this sandwich. This sandwich has crust. You didn't cut it the right angle. I mean, and narcissists will come up with all sorts of bullshit with that one. But that's what we start seeing happen. And then we're confused about what's going on. And then it confirms to us that our value is rooted in what we do. And then we live in terror. Because instinctively we know that we're going to screw up. We're going to make mistakes. We're not going to measure up. We're not going to be number one. And what happens when we're not number one? We get abandoned. we get discarded. We get forgotten, right? We're just removed, ignored, until they need us again. And then we feel euphoric because, wow, I'm valuable again. Maybe they'll stay this time. Maybe I can keep them. Maybe I can make them stay by pleasing them, by making them feel better. This is where we get stuck in the codependent fantasy, that if I make somebody else feel better, they'll want to keep me because I'm only valuable for what I put out. And that is bullshit. It's BS. So what happens here? Here's where we need to go. This is the beyond codependency concept. So brace yourself here. So we have object, right? Now we have this thing called being. And this is why I called that mastermind being. Yeah, what on earth is being? Anybody want to answer? Because I know there's a few of you watching because the thing tells me so. But if you can post in the comments if you want. Being is this is a tricky thing for us because we don't have a real relationship yet to self. We only have a relationship to action, to performance. We know how to act, but we do not know how to be us. So being is rooted first in what's called awareness. Okay, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight in Being You Brilliantly is awareness, energy, essence. Okay? Essence, experience of who we are. See, beingness isn't a definition. You're not going to look it up in a dictionary and you're going to find Marshall and then I'm doing this. No, beingness is the experience of what is the energy within us. And so sometimes that energy is fatigue, then we be it. Sometimes it's excitement, then we be it. Sometimes it's depression, then we be it. Sometimes it's love, then we be it. Sometimes it's fear, then we be it. Okay? Because that's connecting us to this experience of who we are. And then as we cultivate this awareness of our essence, we get rooted into what happens basically is when you begin to reside in your space, occupying your energy, your being, you stop defining yourself through analysis, like I'm this and I'm that. I really like chocolate cubes and I like cars and I'm really into, whatever. That's not who I am. Those are expressions of my being, but they're not definitions of it. Does that make sense? Where our actions do not define us. They express what we understand about us right now. That's why I see codependency as part of our brilliance and not as an identity or as a disease, but as a function of our being. Because our being said, hey, we need to survive. We want to survive. So let's do this thing. Let's figure this out. So our wisdom got in there. We were able to master it and go, I know how to navigate this now. So that's why I'm not a big fan of those other concepts around codependency. And so I see it as a coping strategy and as a survival, our coping mechanism and a survival strategy that's a result of our brilliance. So in us is an energy that is us. And when we find it, we light up. And then the world shifts. We start getting different results in our lives just by being this energy. And we have all done this at least a couple times in our lives. It may not have been frequent, but we have done it. And it typically shows up in what people would call a talent. It's like, you really do that well. That's kind of effortless for you. You light up when you do that. It kind of just works for you. That's your brilliance coming through. That's your beingness being expressed. But there's an energy behind that. And once you root into that energy, that essence, this is where you start to discover through experience who you are. Now, if you're in Codependence to Confidence and you're doing the HEAL course in that, it has a very specific function in there. Because the heal process is how I deliver people out of the emotional element of codependency, because there's two elements. There's the emotional element, and then there is the relational element. The emotional element is transitioning from shame to love through and then into beingness through what's called embodiments. So it's a 3-stage process. When you go through the heal process, you release the shame, you integrate love, and then you do the embodiment for that week or that topic. You are being guided into an understanding about who you actually are. Every Wednesday, I ask you guys a question. Who would you be? Questions. These questions, every time you guys answer them, I'm like, I hope it clicks. Because what I'm showing you is that your awareness of who you really are is already in you. All you've got to do is tap into it. Okay? You got to lean into it. You got to be into that space. And then once you have that, you do not worry about your value anymore. Okay? Because value is no longer attached to output. It's attached to your beingness. It's something you own. It's not something you evaluate. It's not like you log into your bank account and my value account, I had 2,000 value coins today. No, you're being in it. And when we tap into that, then the magic shows up, because it's more like, I want a healthy relationship that really fits me. Boom, shows up. I want a job that fits me. Boom, shows up. I want wealth, shows up. Health shows up. Okay, guys? This is why I go towards brilliance. This is why we're beyond codependency, and why I reference that, because when we're tapped into this beingness of ourselves, whatever that is, because it's not really definable. There's not a whole lot of words I can give you to tell you of my beingness, other than it lights me up. It's light, and it's radiant, and it's expansive, and it's so simple. But I have to constantly reference it, because I'm attached to output. I'm wondering if I'm doing a good job for you guys. I'm wondering if the course materials I create work for you guys. I'm getting feedback that they do. I'm very oriented towards effectiveness, because why else do it if it's not effective? That's like one of my things. And so I care about that, but I have to pull my value out of that. I have to say, I'm bigger than that. My value is larger than what I do. My value is in being. And then I need to be willing to receive from others this being. Because if they like me for who I am, then I need to allow myself to be seen. And this is where we get connected to abandonment. Because abandonment has two components. And I speak very personally here, guys. The things I teach here aren't something I read in a book. It's not something that I was actually, I've had training. I had extensive shamanic healing training in trauma. That is like my core proficiency is healing trauma. And then the second core proficiency is relationship dynamics, which is, I move towards codependency rather than couples relationships, things like that. But abandonment is something we all relate to, and I've gone through it myself. I was emotionally abandoned by my mother, and then she passed away about 30 years ago. So I was 10. And then my father just discarded us and went after women. He's doing it right now again. It's just amazing. So abandonment is something and this journey I share is something that comes from my experience as well. What I want you to understand about abandonment is two components. We have the relational abandonment, like survival abandonment. Like, mom's left, I can't survive. How am I going to feed myself? Very, very scary for the child. And if you're wrestling with that level, with that type of abandonment, there's trauma. We can get closure on that, the closure technique. It's a technique I developed in my apprenticeship as a shaman. We have currently a 98% success rate. Closure, not coping, meaning I'm indifferent to the event now. I can move on with my life. So if you want information on that, just reach out. But there's a second kind of abandonment, and this is the self-abandonment. And this is where, when we are dealing with relationship, and we are like, when we're in an intimate relationship with another person, and Carol, you'd made reference to this. very, very specifically. And I really liked how you phrased it, so I'm going to find it here. Yeah, let's see. I feel so terribly rejected if no one calls me or responds to my questions, my messages, things like that. This is relational abandonment rather than survival abandonment. And this is where you feel unkept. Like you aren't valued by these individuals. And what's going on here in the background is we have this thing called attachment. And attachment is a bonding process that we human beings do. As children, especially as infants, we attach to the parent psychologically and through our identity and physically and emotionally, so we can understand who we are through their feedback. We can understand how to deal with the world, because instinctively we all know the world has dangers in it. And so the child uses this attachment to help discover who they are, start mapping themselves out, and then get connected to how to deal with the world, right? That's survival plus relational attachment. As we become more safe in the world, we realize that the world is safe. Mom and dad are keeping us safe. We got food and shelter. Then our priority switches over to a relational attachment. And this is where we start to define who we are within the container that Ma and Pa provide us. And they provide us a lot of feedback through what's called reflection. We've all received reflection. Unfortunately, we've received false reflection. That reflection would be communicated as, you're a burden, you're selfish, why do you act that way, grow up, why don't you know better, things like that. Positive, healthy reflection is, hey, I see you, I like you, I'm grateful you exist, I want to spend time with you, I want to just be in your presence, I'm grateful you're in my life, you add to my life, I like who you are. Think about that. I like who you are. Let that sink in. That's very important. Because when a child is praised and enjoyed for who they are, then they're able to go, hey, I know me. I can reference me. I'm tangible. I'm real. Okay, I can do this. And we become, like I said, tangible, real, feelable. We get a sense of us through this positive reflection. But when we're critically and chronically criticized for what we do, we are being emptied and we're being conditioned what to do to please them. So again, we move into that utility relationship and out of the connection relationship. And this is where we have that relational abandonment. And this attachment that shows up turns into one of three things. Okay, so there's 4 styles of attachment. One's called secure, one's anxious, one's anxious, then there's avoidant, and then there's disorganized. Secure attachment it happens when the relationship between the child and the parent, or a person and a person, is secure. And it's actually, ironically, guys, secured through conflict and difference. So the child can express themselves and the parent still receives them and says, I love you. I adore you. Oh, you're in pain. The parent comforts the child. The child screws up. The parent kindly keeps them accountable while helping them discover and understand what's going on for them. Okay? Really, really important. I'm going to mute that. Well, what happened to us is because we're attached over here in the object orientation, we developed one of the other 3. Either we became anxious, which means we chase and we cling and we want to control, absorb them, keep them close, or we became avoidant, which means I want to run away. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I don't want to be smothered and absorbed. I don't want to be enmeshed. And then there's disorganized, which is a combination of avoidant and anxious attachment. This is what has to be, it's not technically healed, it's matured. Okay, so like Kara, where you're hurting there because you're not being valued for who you are, being included in your desire for attention. Because again, attention is a valid need. It doesn't need to be made wrong. It's a valid need. What we got to do there is we have to shift our value from that orientation of being chosen to going, I am worth being kept, feeling it, choosing and valuing our needs and our beingness. And then we become available to have this reciprocal experience in a secure attachment. If that makes any sense. I hope it does. But that's what's going on. That's how we heal abandonment, is we mature attachment into security with right people, with healthy people, along with dealing with the survival trauma and the abandonment, the trauma that comes with being discarded by someone we cared about. Because that can really disorient ourselves. But it's a maturation process as well. Okay? So that's what I wanted to talk about today is dealing with the value, and the dreaded no. When we have to say no to somebody, guys, we're valuing ourselves. We're appreciating ourselves. We're standing up for us. That's the magic here. It's us that's being valued. So the brain values what it defends. So when we stand up for ourselves by saying no, the brain's starting to get a message that this is important. Let's value this. And when we detach from caring about other people's feelings, when we return that responsibility to them, and we give ourselves permission to understand the real core need behind needing to regulate their emotions and get that met, then we're not going to have this fear anymore. Because you'll notice in a few of these posts, I've referenced people back to their core needs. Because other models, especially therapeutic understanding right now, and other coaches out there on this, they really want you to become tolerant of letting other people have their feelings. But that doesn't fix anything. That puts us in what I call a coping loop. And coping loops are these loops we create to tolerate something. We're not here to tolerate. We're here to create and receive and enjoy something bigger. Okay, so we got to stay out of those loops, and the way we do that is by understanding that our desire for someone else's approval, for their inclusion, for their attention, is the expression of a need, a core need that needs to be heard, seen, valued, and met. And once that's met, then we're not scared to say no, because we're not dealing with scarcity anymore. We're not scrambling to keep a hold of the approval that we've gotten. We're receiving the approval because we're receiving judgment too. Approval is a judgment. Rejection is a judgment. When we're willing to receive that, then we win. We become very, very powerful there. So that's what I want you to think about this week. We'll even make that your experiment this week. What are you willing to do? Are you willing to receive your core need, identify it, and understand it? So briefly, because we've been going, 20 minutes now, 30 minutes, free coaching section, guys. Core needs are easily identifiable by looking at what you lose if you don't get the outcome. Okay? So, like, if you don't get their approval, what does that mean? What happens? Are you not loved? Do you feel shitty? Do you feel shameful? If you find yourself feeling shame, use the shame clearing and heal. If you're a member, if you want the shame clearing, I actually offer it in the first step. You can go to firststep.freetheself.com, and that is the first step of the 3-step process, the heal process. But if you release the shame, then you can bring in love, right? And you can get in contact back with that need. So there's only 10 core needs. I'll post a PDF on those 10 core needs later today so you can see what they are. And then you can relate to them and you start to fill them. The way we fill needs is by giving them the chance to be valid and then sharing them with trustworthy people and with ourselves. And if you want, deep training on that, definitely join Being You Brilliantly or Codependence to Confidence, because I teach needs fulfillment in Thrive Strategy, which will start late next month. But we're getting into it really deep with Being You Brilliantly. But this is how we deal. Okay, our value is not in what we do, it's in who we are, in our essence, in our being. Okay, the dreaded no does not become dreaded. We lose the fear of saying no when we value ourselves and when we meet our core needs. Because we're coming from an abundant mindset, not from a scarcity mindset. So that allows us to receive more. And then abandonment is healed by maturing the attachment and by relieving the trauma around survival, abandonment, and from that relational discard. So if you guys have other questions, please share them in the group. I'm going to see if I'm going to make an effort to do these kinds of videos every day. Sometimes I'll probably not do them. I'm getting used to it because it takes some energy, and I'm an introverted individual. But I really appreciate the discussions that are going on, your guys' contributions, how you're showing up for each other. Thank you. Thank you for bringing your brilliance, your love, your energy, your beingness to the group. Thank you for showing up. So I will see you guys in my next video, and remember that you're worth knowing, you're worth loving, and you're worth keeping. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye. Ooh, and that is in the way. Bye-bye, guys.